What would happen if the entire universe was shrinking right now and no one had noticed yet? You look up at the sky and something is strange. The stars seem closer. The space feels cramped. The air is thick. Suddenly the earth begins to vibrate almost imperceptibly. The clouds spin as if they were being pulled up into the air. You hear a low, constant sound that doesn't come from anywhere, but you feel it inside your chest. The streets are silent. People look up, but they don't know what they're seeing. The sky is not dark, it is distorted. Lights that shouldn't be there scratch the atmosphere. Satellites disappear. Everything seems to be pulled, as if the universe is being folded in on itself. You try to run, but where to? If everything is collapsing towards a single point, there is no refuge left, not even time, no space, no direction. What if this is just the beginning? What if we are trapped inside an invisible collapse that has already begun and no one noticed? Now tell me, do you believe the universe can reset itself? Do you think we are experiencing something that has already happened before? Comment your theory below. I want to know what you think is happening with time, with space, with everything. What if this wasn't just a hypothesis? Some scientists believe this phenomenon may already be happening, but no one is paying attention. Are we ignoring obvious signs? You will see surprising evidence in this video. The universe, as we know it, has been constantly expanding since the Big Bang. Galaxies move apart, space stretches, and time moves in a straight line. But not all scientists believe this expansion will last forever. There are those who argue that gravity one day may overcome this expansive force. If that happens, everything would start to be pulled back. Every galaxy, star, and planet would be drawn back towards a single point. This phenomenon is called Big Crunch. Imagine everything that exists being compressed by gravity so intense that not even time escapes. Space contracts, distances disappear, and the boundaries of reality are erased. What seemed infinite starts to have the opposite direction. What if this reversal has already begun on scales so vast that we cannot yet detect it? The implications are so great that they defy human understanding, but the collapse is just the beginning. There are even deeper questions waiting. If the universe started to shrink, the changes would not be immediate in our daily lives, but little by little, signs would become impossible to ignore. The first noticeable change would be in the galaxies. They would stop moving away and start to get closer. As space shortens, interstellar distances would become smaller, which would generate large-scale gravitational collisions. The cosmic background radiation, a kind of thermal remnant of the Big Bang, would increase in intensity, warming the universe globally. Stars would become more unstable, planets more exposed, and Earth would begin to feel the effects of this imbalance. Time, directly linked to the expansion of space, would start to contract. Days would shorten. The feeling of time passing would change, making common events more accelerated. Geological, climatic, and even biological processes would compress, affecting the entire dynamics of life as we know it. The very concept of the future would become unstable. The curvature of space would affect gravity on different scales. Previously stable places could undergo gravitational collapse, with regions of the universe becoming dangerously dense. Matter would become denser, and celestial bodies would no longer maintain their orbits. Nothing would stay where it was. The cosmos would stop expanding and begin to collapse. A reverse movement that would make every second an accelerated approach to something greater, faced with something so big, so unpredictable. What is still within our control? When time shortens, gravity changes, and the laws of the universe begin to give way. Even what we took for granted becomes unstable. Reality as you know it may not last forever. And understanding what's behind it is more than curiosity, it's awareness. Your participation here is what keeps this type of content alive and relevant. So, if you value theories that challenge the obvious, ideas that take the universe out of automaticity and bring real questions to the table, leave your like. This shows YouTube that you're here for something bigger and ensures that more people with the same thirst for discovery find this video. Now imagine this. What if this entire collapse of the universe is not the end, but the beginning of something that is about to be born? What if, at the center of all this cosmic compression, a new core of reality is forming? You will understand how this point can give rise to something so powerful, which defies not only the laws of physics, but the very notion of existence. As the universe contracts, matter and energy become increasingly dense. Galaxies compress into smaller and smaller regions, and gravity intensifies exponentially. There is a limit where this compression reaches a point of no return. At that moment, the entire structure of the universe is sucked towards a single point of infinite density, the birth of a new primordial black hole. Unlike common black holes, which form from the collapse of massive stars, this would be the end result of everything that has ever existed, a universal collapse. All particles, photons, atoms, and gravitational fields being absorbed by an absolute force. Space would stop expanding, the light would stop propagating, and time would start to lose meaning. Nothing would escape this point. No information, no memory. This black hole would not be located at a specific point in the universe. It would be the universe itself, reduced to its most extreme form. All the energy accumulated since the beginning of time compressed into something invisible, insurmountable, but mathematically possible. Classical physics stops working at this stage. The laws that govern matter disintegrate, and a new problem arises. What happens to the structure of reality when it is pushed outside its own limits? The idea that black holes destroy everything they absorb is no longer an absolute consensus in modern physics. Some of the most respected minds in science believe that information is not destroyed when it crosses the event horizon. It is preserved. Even if matter loses its form, the data about what it was would continue to exist as compressed records on a scale that we cannot yet access. This opens up space for an even more disturbing thought. What if the universe, when collapsing, does not erase its history, but stores it entirely? Every particle, every instant, every thought, every moment lived by any form of life would in some way be encoded in this final point. We are not talking about a symbolic memory. We are talking about the possibility of a cosmic structure that records everything with absolute precision, as if the universe created its own database. No matter what was physically destroyed, the information, in the most fundamental sense, would still be there. What would this mean for everything that has ever existed? And for us, if the entire trajectory of the universe is recorded, then technically, nothing is lost. The idea of an end, from this perspective, becomes fragile. Because what is preserved can be interpreted, read, or even reconfigured. This hypothesis gives rise to profound debates about identity, time, and existence. Would you just be a body, or would it be a pattern of information within this great cosmic structure? What's more, if everything is being recorded, who or what would be able to access this memory? This raises an even more provocative question. The universe, in its entirety, could be more than just matter and energy. It could contain a form of primitive consciousness, an intelligence emerging from the complexity of the system itself, something that notices what happens and remembers. If everything that has ever existed remains recorded, then perhaps on some level you are still there too, in another time, in another form, like a fragment of information waiting to be accessed. Now, think with me. If you could recover a single moment from the universe, what would it be? Would you revive the origin, or would you try to understand the end? Comment below. What do you think really happens to the information in the universe? Do you believe it is preserved, forgotten, or reinterpreted in some way? We cannot yet understand. Your theory could be just what someone needs to see everything from another angle. But what if what we call the memory of the universe is not just stored, but active? What if data from the past is still processing in real time? There are researchers who believe that the collapse of the universe could affect more than matter and energy. It could distort the logic of time itself. Some signs suggest that it may not be flowing as we imagine, and what comes next could completely change the way you understand the passing of seconds. Time, as you know, depends on space. They do not exist separately. If space is collapsing, time collapses with it. And this isn't just a theoretical idea, it's a direct consequence of relativity. The flow of time, which appears constant to us, is actually shaped by the curvature of space. When this curvature reaches extremes, time begins to warp. He slows down, fold, and eventually, it may become irrelevant. In a scenario of universal collapse, what we call past, present, and future would no longer have an order. Events would no longer happen in sequence. They would overlap. The idea of before and after would no longer make sense. Time, like a straight line, would disappear. There would only be one cycle left where everything repeats itself, and eternity where things have already happened, are happening and will happen at the same time. Could you still distinguish the now, or would you be trapped in an infinite overlap of memories, actions, and possibilities? Quantum physics, when faced with extreme gravity, admits flaws in the models we know. This leaves room for interpretations that border on the incomprehensible. Time could close in on itself like a closed circuit, and in this scenario, the universe would not move towards an end, but would eternally return to the beginning. The idea that the universe had a single, definitive beginning may be incomplete. For some theoretical physicists, the Big Bang was not the origin of everything, but just one phase of a much larger cyclical process. A cosmic pattern where the universe is born, expands, collapses, and begins again, repeatedly, on timescales that defy any human understanding. If this hypothesis is correct, the current universe may be just one of countless others that have ever existed. In each cycle, a sequence is repeated: accelerated expansion, gravitational deceleration, total collapse, and restart. Like a system that never completely erases itself, but restarts based on accumulated information. This means that the history of the universe can be a repeat, not just physical, but informational. Same patterns, same structures, same mistakes, happening again. Have you ever had the feeling that certain events repeat themselves? Why do some coincidences seem to go beyond chance? Within this theory, these repetitions would not be an illusion. They would be echoes of previous versions of the universe, marks left by past cycles that, in some way, cross time and remain with us. If the universe restarts itself, what stops fragments of information from surviving the collapse? The most disturbing thing about this hypothesis is that if all this has happened before, then the very notion of progress may be relative. We would not be heading towards something new, but merely returning to the starting point. A repetition so grand that it includes entire galaxies, and maybe even you. But what if this time something is different? What if this next cycle doesn't follow the same pattern? There are indications that the universe to come may not obey the same laws. And what would that mean for existence? As we know it, if you've come this far, it's because you're among the minds that see beyond the obvious. People who value difficult questions, bold theories and ideas that challenge everything we know, that like you leave isn't just a click. It's a sign that you're part of a community that thinks differently. Have you left your like yet? This is the moment. This is how YouTube understands that you want to see more content that really provokes, informs, and makes you leave here thinking. When the universe reaches a point of extreme density, some theories suggest that it does not disappear. He starts again. But the universe that emerges after this restart is not an exact copy of the previous one. It could be completely different, with physical structures that don't follow the same rules we know. Nothing guarantees that the fundamental laws of physics will remain the same from one cycle to the next. In fact, many theoretical proposals indicate that these laws can be reconfigured, generating realities with completely unpredictable behaviors. Universal. Physical constants, such as the speed of light, gravity, and electromagnetic force, could take on new values. This would transform the entire dynamics of the cosmos. Basic elements of matter could form in other ways, with interactions that would be considered impossible today. Gravity, for example, could not only attract but repel under certain conditions. What if light no longer had a fixed speed limit? Communication between points in the universe could occur instantaneously, which would completely change the way space is organized. Furthermore, the dimensional structure itself could change. Instead of 3 spatial and 1 temporal dimensions, a new universe could contain more or fewer dimensions. This would open up possibilities for geometries that the human brain is not even capable of visualizing. Causality, that is, the relationship between cause and effect, could work in a non-linear way. Events could occur out of any order, generating realities where the concept of sequential time would lose meaning. This new universe would not just be an alternative version of what we already know. It would be a reality with its own parameters, its own definitions of space, time, movement, and stability. Within it, everything we consider absolute could be irrelevant. What's impossible here could just be the starting point there. Traditional science still treats consciousness as a product of the brain, a direct result of bioelectrical and chemical activity. But this view is being challenged by theories that go beyond biology. For some researchers, consciousness may have a quantum basis, something that does not depend exclusively on the physical structure of the human body. If this is true, consciousness would not be restricted to organic matter, but rather linked to fundamental information that interacts with the very fabric of the universe. In this context, a disturbing question arises. What if consciousness, as a standard of information, can survive the collapse of space-time? If information is not lost, as discussed previously, and if consciousness is a special type of information integrated into the quantum field of the universe, it could, in theory, resist collapse and emerge in a new physical context. Not as memory, but as active perception, a presence, a continuity. The hypothesis is not confirmed by current science, but it is also not completely ruled out. Some experiments in the area of quantum neuroscience and theoretical physics suggest that conscious processing may involve phenomena that are not explained by classical models. And if so, the collapse of the universe would not mean the end of consciousness. It would be a transition. Perhaps in a new universe, the consciousness that persisted will not recognize what was. Or perhaps it carries fragments, patterns, inexplicable sensations, a kind of start with traces. You would cease to be what you are now, but perhaps you would not cease to exist completely. We would be witnesses of a universe under construction. Or who knows, the last witnesses of an extinct universe. Now imagine this. What if you are the living memory of the universe? Some ideas are too strong to keep. After everything you've seen so far, it's impossible to see the universe the same way again. This kind of reflection isn't for everyone, but you know someone who needs to hear it. Share this video now with those who face real big questions. Let's take this discussion beyond the borders of the obvious and spread this theory to those who also feel that something bigger is happening. If the universe collapses and starts over, who's to say we're not already living this cycle for the 1000th time? What if every déjà vu, every coincidence is just an echo of something that has already happened in another version of this same universe? Maybe time, as we think, isn't moving us forward, but just making us loop in a pattern that no one notices. Maybe you've seen this moment before. Perhaps this exact question has already been asked in another reality. And in this cycle, the only constant is the search. The desire to understand what we are, what came before, and what is yet to come. Maybe we're not the first, nor will we be the last. Maybe this universe is just a sigh between infinite cycles, and maybe it's all about to happen again. What do you think? Leave your theory in the comments. Your insight may open up new questions that have not yet been asked. Why? What if this is happening now? Here, each theory takes us one step further. Each mystery is a new chance to challenge what science cannot yet explain. Being part of this is more than watching videos. It's walking through ideas that expand thinking and open portals to the unknown. Sign up now and continue this journey with us. There's so much more waiting for you, and some answers may be closer than they seem. The universe hasn't said everything yet. What you have seen so far has been just a layer of what lies behind reality. There's another theory waiting for you, and it's calling you now. Click on the next video and continue this journey through everything that science still hesitates to explain. You're about to face something that could change the way you view time, space, and maybe even your very existence.